I've been looking for about 10 years now, and I don't find anything. But the problem is that the magic is lost in the outside world. I mean, I think I'm more withdrawn from the trappings as I were maybe 10 years ago. I get it, it's fleeting, it comes and it goes. It doesn't interest me as much. And when I look inside, I have brief I mean, everybody spoke about the bliss and the great stuff. I mean, I don't feel any of that. I'm just
but if
left.
you noticed, I haven't said very much about bliss this weekend.
I'm just left more sensitive. The world comes at me the world comes at me more, in fact. I mean, when I'm quieter and in spaces like this, and if I even go out and have lunch, I mean, people come at me and everything comes at me stronger.
It's very true. We become more sensitive, but less hurtable. Normally we think that in order not to be hurt, we have to defend ourselves from the world. But in this approach, we actually become more and more open, less and less defended. But in fact, at the same time, less hurtable.
I'm just exhausted, and there seems to be no way out because I've done this to myself. I don't find anything outside, and I don't find anything inside. And I've read all the books, and I get it conceptually. I get it. I'm on board. That's it. There's no hack to it. How do I wake up? I just want to wake up.
Tell us about the eye that doesn't find anything outside or inside. Tell us about the one that is looking outside and inside.
The who?
The eye. When you say, I don't find anything outside and I don't find anything inside, tell us about the eye that is looking and not finding.
I can't answer that. I can't locate myself inside or outside.
Okay, you can't locate it. Tell us more about it.
I can't locate myself inside. If I look, it's just,
okay,
I can
that's
put
fine. You can't
attention
locate it.
on my body.
No, don't tell us about your body. Tell us about the eye that is looking for something outside and inside but doesn't find anything. You can't locate that eye. Okay, tell us something else about it.
It's there.
It's present, yes.
It's
what
just
else?
there, and it's not fun. It's just there.
Yes. It's not
fun.
Fun? Or
no.
Fun?
As in, it does not. The whole point of.
No, it's true. It's no fun.
It's no fun.
If by fun you mean a series of.
It doesn't do anything.
No, it doesn't do anything.
As in, life's supposed to get easier or something. Maybe that's why I went after it in the first place. And then life doesn't seem to get easier, just more sensitive. It's just there, does jack.
So this eye that you were talking about earlier, that is looking outside and inside, this eye experiences difficulties and therefore resistance.
Yes. It does nothing. It's there.
But does it experience any resistance to experience?
No.
Does it ever say, this experience is difficult, I don't like it?
No, it's just...
So for this eye, there is no difficult experience. So when you say life gets more and more difficult, for whom does it get more and more difficult? Not for what you call I.
No, but I'm not in that I. I'm the separate little self. I want to go there, to that I. I get it conceptually and I get glimpses of it, but I'm still stuck in my separate self, and I get it. I don't know how to get to the other
So
side.
far you've got three eyes. You've got your separate self, you've got the I that is stuck in your separate self, and you have the I of awareness. Now, do you experience yourself as three different eyes? Or are you not always one? Is the experience of I not always one thing? Okay, now say to yourself inside, say the word I. Say I am to yourself. Now you are not numerous I's. in this moment. You are just one I. The I that says, I am. And the reason that I can say from experience, I am, is because I know that I am. In other words, I know myself. You know yourself. Otherwise you would not be able to say, I am. If you didn't know yourself, you would say, I am not. But you never say, I am not, because you never cease to know yourself. I am, and I know that I am. Yes? Now, tell us about that I.
Nothing to say. I mean,
okay, that's very good. Why not? Why can't you say anything about it other than, I know that I am? You're quite right, but why?
unaffected. Yeah. No feelings or... it's still.
Yeah? Say more. I know your words are only approximations, but just do your best to describe it.
It's absolute. It's total. It's complete.
Yeah, perfect. What else?
Indifferent.
Yes, but not a cold indifference, not an I don't care.
No, it's
but rather an I don't mind.
unaffected, perhaps.
You know, when at the end of his life, when someone asked Krishnamurti, what is your secret? He didn't say, I don't care what happens. He said, I don't mind what happens. It's not a disdain for experience. It's not, I don't care. It's, I don't mind what happens. My peace is not dependent on what happens. What else?
There, just there.
Yeah, present, aware, still,
Big.
unaffected, peace. I mean, what else do you want in your life? Well, what else are you looking for? Whole, complete, perfect, fulfilled, peaceful. You're describing your experience of yourself in this moment. What else do you want in life?
For it to stay.
Does it ever disappear? Do you ever disappear?
Life's really sticky and things are so sticky and emotions.
I'm not asking about sticky emotions. I'm asking about yourself. Do you ever disappear? Just become more and more acquainted with that. You'll find everything you have ever truly longed for there. You don't have to take my word from it, because from your own experience, you have just told us it is peaceful, it is whole, it is perfect, it is complete, it never disappears, it is present, it is aware. These were your words. You used all these words. You said it was indifferent. I qualified that word slightly, but in other words, it is not affected by experience. These were your words when I asked you to describe yourself. And I could see that your words came from your experience. You weren't just speaking what you've heard or read in non-dual books or clips. And just go back, take yourself back to that experience over and over again until you begin to feel that you live there, or rather not live there, as if you were one thing and it was something else, but rather you live as that. You know yourself as that. You begin to rest in your own being, to know your own being and to rest as that. First of all, behind all experience, and then in the midst of all experience. Become acquainted with yourself. First of all, visit her from time to time. But then start spending the weekend there, and sooner or later get married and move in.
when we've got to the stage of being able to move consciously in and as awareness through the phenomenal world, I've heard you say, I think, that most people choose to stop there in that happiness or contentment or peace, but that there's another stage.
The way I usually describe it is in 3 steps. The first step, the recognition, I am awareness. And that is the culmination of the neti-neti approach. I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my sensations. I am awareness. And then the next step is the exploration and the recognition of the nature of the awareness that I now know myself to be. And then the third step is to integrate that understanding in all realms of our life. That means the way we think and feel, and the way we subsequently act and relate. And that third stage is really a never-ending stage. We can never say that this understanding is fully integrated, fully aligned, fully expressed. There's always room for deepening our immersion in this understanding and for living its implications more fully in our lives. That never comes to an end. At least I hope it never comes to an end.
Okay, that's clear.
As somebody once said, I don't remember who it was, when the path to God comes to an end, the path in God begins. So the path in God is a never-ending path that has unfathomable depths.
Because it seems sometimes that there's almost a coming out process happening as the realized self or the new self sort of takes over from the
Absolutely.
old.
That's it. That's the path in God.
Okay.
That's the what Francis called post-enlightenment sadhana. That the practice we do to align all aspects of our experience with the recognition of our true nature. The alignment, the realignment of our thoughts and feelings, because for most people, their thoughts and feelings and subsequent activities and relationships express the desires, the fears, the anxieties, the neuroses of a separate self. So when our true nature has been recognized, there is a reprogramming, not just of our thoughts and feelings, but there is a reprogramming that happens at the level of the body, the way we feel the body, and the way we perceive the world. And that reprogramming takes time, because the attitudes, the feelings, the anxieties, the fears, the desires of the separate self, they don't just exist in our experience as thoughts. They are deeply programmed, they are etched into the body. And it takes time for that old programming to be gradually washed away by our new understanding.
And it sometimes doesn't seem as though that new self is coming from an understanding. It's coming straight out before there's even any awareness that it's going to come out. Something comes out that's not expected.
Yes, just as previously the desires, fears, anxieties, etc. of the separate self expressed themselves spontaneously in our thoughts, feelings, activities and relationships without our having to calculate how to express those fears and desires. So now the inherent qualities of our true nature begin to express themselves in our thoughts and feelings, in our activities and relationships, but we can cooperate. It happens naturally, but we can also cooperate with the realignment of our thoughts, feelings, with the way we feel the body and perceive the world. And what I refer to as the yoga meditations, the collection of meditations, transparent body, luminous world. There are no self-inquiry meditations in that collection. There are no meditations that explore the nature of ourself. They are all meditations that are to do with this realignment of the way we feel the body and perceive the world in line with our new understanding of ourself. And it's true that in some traditions, this may be what you were referring to, in some traditions stop with enlightenment, the recognition of our true nature, and pay no attention to the body and the world. They just dismiss the body and the world. All that's necessary is to abide in your true nature and its eternal, infinite, blissful nature. And that's all that's required. Well, that's fine. But in this tradition, we return, it's more the Tantric approach than the Vedantic approach. We return to experience, and we try to fully integrate and live the implications of our understanding at the relative level of experience. It's not enough just to sit in our cave. I don't mean a physical cave, I mean the cave of the heart, experiencing the bliss of the self. That may be enough for some people, and that's fine. But for those of us that want to go back to the world of experience and to have this understanding be completely integrated in our activities and relationships with our families, our friends, our work, then this post-enlightenment sadhana, I don't really like that phrase, but it's too exotic for me, but you know what I mean, that this exploration and practice that we do after the recognition of our true nature is essential. It happens naturally, slowly, but we can cooperate. How many people here know that they are eternal, infinite awareness, and yet feel that they are something solid and dense sitting on a chair? It's very, very common for many people, such as all of you here, who have this deep interest and deep understanding in their true nature and a very genuine knowledge of ourselves as unlimited, open, empty, ever-present awareness, and yet still to feel I am something solid, dense, located. Remember, you've heard this often. Me tell the story of the Zen monk on his deathbed who was asked by one of his students, how are things for you now, Master? And he replies, everything is very good except that my body is having a hard time keeping up. Well, that was a beautiful and humble thing to say. The Zen master, his mind was open and spacious and peaceful like the sky, but there was still some pockets of his experience, particularly his experience of the body, that were yet to be colonized by his understanding. And he very humbly acknowledged that on his deathbed. So it takes time for this genuine understanding, it's not intellectual understanding, this genuine understanding to seep into the body, to permeate the body, to saturate the body, and to saturate our perception of the world. It takes time.
Hi, Rupert.
Hi.
I had a question. Very often it seems that purification or any practice taken is seen to only derive from a separate self. And I wondered whether there was a way to engage in that, whereby it's not just coming from the ego trying to achieve something, but whereby it is awareness wishing for the prism of the body-mind to shine more clearly.
Yes. Any practice that is undertaken with a desire to either recognize your true nature or to assimilate that recognition in all realms of your experience is a non-egoic practice. be wary of an attitude that says any kind of practice, meditation, purification, practice is by definition initiated by the separate self and is therefore an expression of ignorance, therefore I shouldn't do anything. If you take that attitude, you'll just remain with your suffering. So it's true that any practice, awareness obviously doesn't need to practice. So any practice would only be the practice of a finite mind wanting to return to its, or to recognize its infinite nature. And as such, it is legitimate. Just because ultimately we understand there is no such separate entity as a finite mind or separate self, that doesn't invalidate the need for practice as long as we believe and feel that we are such a mind or such a self. So if you do feel, I am a separate self or I am a finite mind, and if we feel that, we will by definition suffer from time to time. In other words, if we suffer, then we should practice some form of practice, some form of meditation, some form of inquiry. And your intention, even if it seems to be a separate self or a finite mind that is doing the practice, in other words, even if it seems to be an egoic activity, the fact that it is initiated by your desire to either recognize or assimilate the recognition of your true nature, then that intention makes it a non-egoic activity.
And this is what it feels like as well, because I err more to the side of actually engaging more as opposed to saying I am already awareness, so I don't need to do anything. And I feel a quote comes to mind from A.D. Shankara where he said that no action need be taken to realize the self, but action need be taken to purify the mind. And I feel the more and more that I become more aware of the essential nature of myself, the more powerful purification practices actually become, as opposed to, I don't know, there's more of a, they come from a deeper place and they are less selfish and more of like a wanting to purify the human psyche as a whole as opposed to just my own.
Yes. If we investigate our true nature, the purification of the mind takes place as an inevitable byproduct of that investigation. If your mind is repeatedly exploring its source or its essence, it is by definition purifying itself of all its tendencies to direct itself towards something other than its source. So the purification of the mind in this approach is something that we don't directly engage with. It is an inevitable consequence of our investigation into the nature of ourselves. But you could also, if you want to work specifically on purifying your mind, then there's no reason why you shouldn't, as long as you don't believe that the purification of your mind is a necessary prerequisite to the recognition of your true nature. However impure your mind is, it is shining with the light of awareness. All that is necessary is to give your attention to that light.
Okay, that really helps, because I feel that a lot of the time in the spiritual community there seems that kind of confusion of whether to take action or not to, and this kind of balance of resting as I am, and I realise there's not, I always am, so even as I am pure, there's a will to purify that I am still as that action is being taken, so there doesn't need to be a division between just resting or participating.
Yeah, it's not just to know, it's not enough just to know that I am. everybody knows that I am. Not everybody knows what I am. And it's not enough just to know I am awareness. It is necessary, although that is a first step, it is necessary to know the nature of awareness. And it's very common nowadays to mistake the recognition I am awareness for the recognition of our true nature. It's not. It's a step in the right direction. But to truly recognize our true nature is to recognize I am awareness and to recognize the nature of the awareness that I am. And in almost all cases that requires some investigation. If we don't make the investigation, we'll just remain suffering. And it is not enough, if we are suffering, to wash a veneer of non-duality over our experience and to say there's nobody here and nothing to do. If we do nothing, we'll just remain suffering. If we are suffering, there is something to do. In fact, if we are suffering, we are already doing something. It's not possible to suffer without seeking happiness. Has anyone here ever had the experience of suffering and not at the same time be in search of happiness? Suffering is the search for happiness. So to say I am suffering, but at the same time to claim there's nobody here and nothing to do, is a false claim. We are suffering for two reasons. We are suffering precisely because there is somebody here. That somebody is the separate self. So to say I am suffering but there's nobody suffering, it's a contradiction of terms. When I remember the analogy I gave yesterday, if I throw a tennis ball through the space of this room, it meets with no resistance. It sails all the way through the space unless something rises up to stop it. Now, in the absence of something rising up to stop the ball just sails through. It meets no resistance. Suffering is resistance. Suffering is I don't like what is present. Who is it that says, I don't like what is present? That's the hand that comes up to stop the ball. Something in us says, I don't like what is present. That right there is our suffering. In the absence of that I that doesn't like what is happening, experience just flows through us. There's no resistance and there's no suffering. So if we are suffering because a self has risen up, not the self of awareness. Awareness is an open space. It doesn't know the meaning of resistance. If we are suffering, it's because an I has risen in the empty space of awareness and stopped the ball, resisted the experience and said, I don't like this. So to say I am suffering, but there is nobody here, is a contradiction of terms. If we are suffering precisely because in that moment we believe I am a separate self, and the separate self that I believe that I am does not like what is taking place. So if we do nothing, we just continue to suffer. And there's no question of doing nothing if we are suffering, because suffering and the search for happiness are two ways of describing the same experience. So if we are suffering, to say there's nobody here and to say there's nothing to do are simply false statements. If we say, I am suffering, but my suffering appears in the open, empty space of awareness, it's nonsense. We're fooling ourselves. We're not fooling anybody else, of course, but we're fooling ourselves. It's true from an ultimate point of view that everything appears in the open, empty space of awareness. But if we are suffering, it is precisely because we don't know at that moment that we are the open, empty space of awareness. So we should be more honest and more humble and realize I am suffering because in this moment I believe and more importantly feel that I am a separate self. And my suffering is my search for happiness. What should we do? Search for happiness in the right place, which is at the source of the self that I believe myself to be.
So I often felt that I've said to myself before that I would only stop practicing when there is no one left to practice, or stop purifying when there is no one left to purify.
Yes, absolutely right. Or another way of saying that would be to stop practicing when there is no longer any suffering. Which is another way of saying that, stop practicing when I'm happy. When you've found what you want above all else, ask yourself, what do I want above all else? It's obviously happiness. So until you find that happiness, keep seeking for it. But seek for it in the right place. You know enough now you have seen clearly now that the happiness you seek can never be delivered via objective experience. Substances, activities, objects, states of mind, relationships, etc. So have the courage to face that fact. You're young. Don't invest your happiness in objective experience. It will never provide the happiness you want. So there's only one other place to look for happiness. So until you find it, keep seeking it, but seek for it in the right place. And yes, only stop your search when you feel satisfied.